Hey everybody, Michael Snyder, Pacific Northwest Weather Watch. Today is October 10th, and right now we are looking at the infrared satellite imagery. You can see our storm. It is quite spun up here, bringing rounds of precipitation across the region. Also, rounds of thunderstorms have been embedded in some of this activity. We'll take a look at that here, and we'll take a look at where this storm is going over the next day or two. And the next storm system lies off to our north, and it's going to drive down across British Columbia, bring a colder air mass in, and bring some mountain snows. And we'll take a look at the track and the latest on that one as we go through the video here this morning. So here we are right now, and if I look closely, you can see there is some lightning off the coastline and across some of southern Oregon. We've also had some lightning strikes up across portions of Washington, Oregon last night, and southwest Washington as well. So let's go all the way back through yesterday, and you could see that spin in our coastal waters there, and you can see the lightning moving up across northwest Oregon. And this is as we were going through yesterday evening, right before sunset. Then that activity moved up across some of southwest Washington. You can see it right here. Pretty active thunderstorm, quite a few lightning strikes associated with that one. And then you can see also some additional thunderstorm activity popping up across northwest Oregon. We scroll through the overnight hours here, and you can see some moving across portions of southwest Washington, another round there. We scroll on into the early morning hours, and you can see additional thunderstorms popping off across some of southern Oregon. We let this continue. It did get a few across the Columbia Basin. Looks like it's pretty close to Ritzville there, maybe just north of Moses Lake also. And that activity continued back up into some of the mountainous areas, and there we are this morning. And so you can see we do have the chance again today for some of this thunderstorm activity. Now, if you want your own lightning detection system, this smartphone app with the station is great as well, and it stores all the data for you in the cloud. It's a very fun weather station. It's totally wireless. There's no moving parts. It's temperature, humidity, everything you think a weather station should do. It even builds a forecast for you. Click on the link down below if you want to save yourself 10% off on one of those. Now, taking a look at a wider view of the Pacific Ocean, we got Japan to the left, and you can see the Pacific Northwest to the right. And this is another good example on how these typhoons, these tropical systems, can really wreak havoc here indirectly on the Pacific Northwest. So there is the spin in the atmosphere that is our low pressure system we're dealing with right now. And if we take a look here, you'll see the next system here riding down, and then we turn that jet stream north and northeast, and it really carves this next system out over our coastal waters here as well, bringing a colder air mass across the region. You might ask, why is the jet stream acting so wonky? Well, if you take a look at this tropical system there, you can see the big heat transfer process really amplifies this ridge out over the Gulf of Alaska and just allows for that huge kink in the jet stream and allows for that very interesting shaped jet stream back down into the coastal waters. They're carving out that trough over the Pacific Northwest, and then that storm is going to move down into California. So, and you can imagine these are what we know as atmospheric rivers out there. These are always present out across the Pacific Ocean there. And when they hit land, we take note of it and we classify them as atmospheric rivers. So taking a look here at 18,000 feet, again, there's our upper level low. We put this into motion and you can really see the next trough get carved out here, kind of come right down across Pacific Northwest. And we'll take a look at what kind of details we're going to have with this system here in a moment. There's going to be some chillier weather, especially across some of the higher terrain, and you're definitely going to feel it even into the lower elevations. Now, pretty interesting scenario yesterday as we had the jet stream just totally wrapped back around itself. I mean, this is at 34,000 feet, so a completely closed low off our coastline. It's still closed, and if we put this into motion, you can see that's going to be the case today, and then eventually it starts to get kicked through by the next system as we go on in through the weekend. And then you can see, again, at 34,000 feet, that jet stream pretty potent there. You're looking almost 155 knots out of the north coming across southeast Alaska and helps to carve out this next trough and bring that next shot of cold air here into the Pacific Northwest with a big ridge out across the Gulf of Alaska. Anticyclonic flow right there. Now, if we take a look here, precipitation amounts, we'll call it timing. And if we scroll through the day today, you can see multiple rounds of showers from this upper level low, and it eventually starts to kick through. And then watch what happens. We start to tighten this pressure gradient as colder air starts to move down into central British Columbia. You can see these isobars here. That's a pretty good gradient starting to build, and that colder air is going to sag down south across the region. If we were in January or December or even late November, you'd be talking about the potential for some lower elevation snowfall. This is what our snowmakers here look like for portions west of the Cascades once you get into the colder months. The problem is the air mass is not quite cold enough yet here in early October, the first half of October, to bring that into the lower elevations, but it can bring some snowfall to the higher terrain. And you can kind of see the surface feature here as the winds start to turn northerly as we get that pressure gradient and the colder air sinking across the region. Then that low pressure system moves all the way down the coast and peels away from the Pacific Northwest as we go on in through the early portion of next week. More on that here in a moment. So the European model, again, just kind of showing you that it does show the lightning flash density potential here as we go through the day today. So heads up on that. If you see it start raining, eyes on the sky, you might get a flash or two and some thunder as we go through the day today. And then there is a chance as we go on in towards Sunday that we may get another strike or two here across some portions of the region. We'll home in on that a little bit more over the next day or two. Now, accumulated positive snow depth change in inches, because this is what a lot of people want to know about across the backcountry. You can see just a little bit for the higher terrain here with this initial system across the Washington Cascades, Oregon Cascades. It's not going to amount to much. But then when the next system arrives here as we start to head on in towards Saturday, you can see a little bit of that piling up across some of the higher terrain of British Columbia by the time we go towards Sunday morning. And on the day Sunday, we're going to start to pick up that snowfall amount for the Northern Cascades and eventually at the Washington Cascades. There's Snoqualmie Pass and there's Stevens Pass right there. So we could get a bit of snow at times into some of the pass areas here. It shouldn't amount to nearly as much for Snoqualmie Pass versus Stevens Pass. You're probably going to be looking at twice as much, but even then, it's not going to be a lot. We're still early in the season. The sun is still relatively strong and, the surface is still kind of warm. But for some of the higher terrain, you're getting better amounts as we go on in through the day Monday, and then that low pressure starts to pull away. And I show that here, the accumulated positive snow depth change in inches. It doesn't look as dramatic as if you're showing some of these 10-to-1 ratios or Kuchera ratio. It looks like more snowfall showing up on this. But I show that accumulated snow depth because this is a more realistic amount of snow you can expect there. So if you're traveling across I-90 as early as Sunday afternoon, you could see a little bit of that snow flying there. And like the European shows, 1.2 inches eventually accumulating. The plows are have no problem keeping up with that. And again, maybe just 2-3 inches for Stevens Pass. But once you get across the higher terrain, some snow amounts are going to pile up a bit more. Now, again, 10-to-1 snow ratio here, Kuchera. This takes into account the lower levels of the atmosphere, but you can see as we scroll on in through next week, the amounts of snow we are expecting. So this is an interesting look at things here as well. At 10,000 feet is the top of this diagram. This is Mount Hood ski area, about 53 or 5,400 feet up. And you can see that very cold air aloft arriving with that next system here as we head off in towards Saturday, and then eventually as we go on in through Sunday, the very cold air arrives. Same thing for Paradise, as you can imagine. And this is Seattle, Tacoma. You can clearly see that next system kind of rolling in here with the chillier air aloft. And you're going to feel this even down into the lower elevations. You're going to notice how raw it is on some of these mornings coming up. Snoqualmie Pass, something similar here as well. This is a shorter range model. This only goes out to Sunday afternoon. And you can see how cold that air aloft is arriving as we go through this weekend. And there's Stevens Pass also. And you can really see the difference between Snoqualmie at 3,000 feet versus Stevens Pass on Highway 2 there at 4,000 feet. So taking a look here at 925 millibar winds. So this shows you nicely what is going on with our closed low off the coastline. Kicking off some winds today. There is a wind advisory out there for some of the gorge here, kind of isolated locations there for some gusts up over 45 miles per hour possible. But as we scroll on in through the weekend here we go through Saturday, and you can see the next system starts to roll in here. We get some onshore flows. We go on in through the day Sunday. That's the best time for you build a little bit of that mountain snow there on the day Sunday night. And then you can kind of see that surface low start to develop as we increase that pressure gradient across southern British Columbia. The colder air starts to sag into British Columbia. It's flowing off the continent right here, western BC across Vancouver Island around the surface low as that colder air moves down across the region. And you can see we get the Fraser River outflow winds start to go there on Sunday. Again, a little bit of a precursor to hopefully something we see in the winter months. I know snow lovers, especially down into the lower elevations, want to see that Fraser River outflow and the Okanagan River outflow going as we get on in towards a more serious threat here at some point through December, January, or maybe February. But you can kind of see that low pressure moving down the coastline, strong pressure gradient there, and we start to turn the flow offshore and northerly across much of the region as we go on in through the day on Monday. So yeah, you can see that. And once that low pulls away, we may clear out and get a couple nice days on the backside of that system, but we got a long way to go for that. And looking at mean sea level pressure, this kind of shows you as well. There goes our system right now. And then you can see what happens here as we get this subtle troughing with that colder air moving down across British Columbia. And again, you can see the pressure gradient. It's going to be coming down to the north and the northeast, pushing across the region. So taking a look here at 850 millibars, this is at 5,000 feet, and this is temperature anomaly. When you get into the blues and the greens, you are looking at below normal for this time of year. The oranges and the reds and the whites and pinks out there are above normal. So there's our system we're dealing with now. But we take a look off in towards Saturday night into Sunday. You can see that cooler air moving down across the area, and there's that subtle surface feature right there. You can even see it at 5,000 feet, and then you can kind of see that colder air moving down into British Columbia. And again, it's not like this. It would be a different scenario if this was December, January, or February, with much colder air would probably be moving down into the region with us. Just kind of a little tease of what we might get at some point this winter, or at least I hope so. I'm always looking for the big snowfall winter events down into the lower elevations, but you can kind of see that big change as we go from where we are now, and then as we go on into the weekend, and then that low pressure curling down the coastline, pulling away and turning our flow offshore. So also, this is a big deal here, the apparent temperature. So as we go through the day today, you can see the region warm up, some 70s. Is going to feel quite nice there. And this is the parent temperature. This is taking into account wind chill temperatures across the area. So there we go on the day today. We go on in through Saturday. And actually, let me back that up here, because we go through the day today. You can see Friday. That is about when the Mariners game starts. Looks like some maybe upper 50s out there. Not too bad. And of course, there is a roof. If there are any stray showers around, they'll have that roof closed. But you might get the open roof here tonight for the game. And then we go through Saturday. And again, something similar tomorrow, Saturday, but we do cool things down east of the Cascades. And you can see across the Cascades, things are starting to cool down a bit more. But watch as we go on into Sunday. Here we go. Yeah, you can see some of these temperatures on Sunday. Pretty raw out there. Seattle, it's going to feel like 52 for a high. That's going to be a bit of a shock to the system. And you can see some of the mountainous areas on the day Sunday, pretty chilly. But look at by the time we go towards Monday morning, look at Seattle, 41. A lot of the region, very chilly when you take the wind chill factor into account. Willamette Valley, it's going to feel like the mid 40s at best, and across some of the mountainous areas, pretty darn right chilly. Some teens showing up across British Columbia. And then as we go through the day on Monday, as that low pulls away, we're probably going to get some brisk, crisp days here showing up, at least a couple of them, and bringing some decent weather in here. So I look forward to that. But again, we'll worry about that here later. And just to be consistent, I'm going to show the European Artificial Intelligence versus the GFS. There goes that next system. We're getting pretty good model agreement there, and you can see that upper level low moving down the coastline here as we go on in towards next week. Now, here's the 6 to 10 day. Got the below normal broad brush here across the west. Kind of a mixed bag here in the Pacific Northwest. Don't put too much stock into that just yet. Take it with a grain of salt. We'll see what that is going to do over the next few days. And yeah, check out the Patreon page if you like. And what else? I'll wrap this video up here. Hopefully you guys are having a good day. We'll break everything down again tomorrow. I'll go into a bit more detail with the high resolution models on some of the winds here, like coming through the Fraser River Valley, and when the wind shift will occur across the Puget Sound, and any thunderstorm potential or anything like that. And we'll go over a little bit more detail tomorrow with some of the high resolution stuff. So anyway, hope you guys are having a good day. Click like and subscribe. We'll do this all again tomorrow, and I'll talk to you guys then.